In this video, I'm going to talk about how your personality type can actually determine how you respond to training. And when you understand what's called your neurotype, you can cater your training more to fill your needs as a swimmer, which can help you break through training plateaus and become a faster, stronger swimmer. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what type of swimmer you are and how to adjust for your training so that you can get maximal results. I'm Jake Tyson. I've helped thousands of swimmers, from high school athletes and master swimmers to pros like Chad Declos and Max Litchfield, break through their plateaus and smash their PBs just by adding my strength training system into their routines. So whether you're aiming for a personal best or trying to move up in the rankings, I've seen this approach work time and time again. So here's what we're gonna go through first in this video. I'm gonna walk you through the 5 main swimmer neurotypes and how each one responds to training. And then I'll show you how to tailor your swim and strength program based on your neurotype so you can stop wasting time on the wrong types of workouts and start seeing faster progress that aligns with your needs. So basically, every swimmer is different. We all understand this. We all have unique strengths and weaknesses, but there's actually a method to help you figure out what you need based on your personality type, which shows you your brain chemistry, which shows you how your body's gonna respond to training. Now, I learned about this in the neurotyping system developed by Christian Thibodeau. He's the guy that popularized this, and when I started learning about it, everything just seemed to click. Why some programs work for some swimmers, but not others, and why certain coaches work really well with certain types of swimmers. Because you have some swimmers thrive on intensity and need constant variety, while others love structure and repetition. And by discovering your personality type or your neurotype, you can tailor that program, whether you're a swimmer or whether you're a coach, to how your swimmer or how you work at your natural best, because you're going with what your body's craving rather than against it. All right, let's get into the main neurotypes. As I go through these, think about which one sounds most like you. Remember, you don't need to have all of the traits of one type, but as I talk about one type, if you're like, yeah, that sounds a lot like me, and the others sound a lot less like me, then you're probably gonna be more towards the one that you have the majority of the feelings or the vibes of that neurotype. And we'll go more into the specifics of each neurotype in other videos. This is more of an outline. So first, we've got the neurotype 1A, the intensity neurotype. 1As need to get stronger to get faster. These swimmers thrive on intensity and high energy environments. Type 1As are the kind of athletes who love to be at the center of attention. They're usually really loud, verbal, incredibly competitive. You'll often see them as the ones who push the pace. They're the ones that are like trash talking before races, but they really hate losing more than anything. And because they're driven by intensity, 1As are always looking for the next challenge, the next thing that they can win. They love explosive, high weight training. So the gym works really well for them. Just getting them really strong, lifting really heavy weights is one of the best ways to actually transfer that strength into the pool for them. And in the pool, using resisted methods is going to be really nice for them. So bungees, parachutes, power towers, things like that. That's where these guys are going to thrive. So they're very neural, very fast twitch, and very competitive. But the downside is because they're so competitive, and because they can get carried away, they tend to burn out pretty easily because they don't know when to back off or when to slow down. So if you're a 1A, pacing yourself can actually be quite a struggle. You need to learn to hold back and finish your sessions on a high before you start getting really, really fatigued. So personality traits, as we said, competitive and loud, trash talker. They're usually sore winners and sore losers. Very goal-driven, they're impulsive, they seek out challenges but don't always think through their responses to things. They thrive under pressure, they perform their best in high-stakes situations, but they can obviously burn out very easily if they're not careful. So what doesn't work for the 1As? Long, slow endurance training. It's gonna be too boring for them, it's gonna burn them out, it's gonna drain them. So if you are going to do it, you have to add these little challenges into that longer work. And you still can't do too much of that longer work because it's just gonna drain them, make them feel terrible. So you got to mix up the paces so you don't get bored and unengaged, because when the 1A gets unengaged, they're going to make everyone else's life a misery. If you're in practice, if you're a coach, they're the swimmer that's going to start picking and causing mischief because they're looking for some sort of challenge, something to keep them engaged. If your workouts don't have a goal, they're going to struggle. They need some sort of goal to keep them engaged. So time stuff, use constraints to work on technical stuff. They're gonna hate really strict or highly controlled environments. These are the guys that if you act too much like the boss, they're gonna look for a way to defy. So don't let them feel like they're being boxed in. Don't let them feel like they're being held back. Strength training tips for the 1A. Like we said before, just focus on heavy compound lifts and high intensity intervals, and focus on making small wins every week. Record stuff, time stuff, lift a bit heavier, try and go a bit faster in whatever the distance you're sprinting or whatever the set is, and record that stuff so they can see their progressions, because that's going to be really motivating for them. And here's a big thing: When you're doing high intense stuff with them, allow plenty of rest between sets. The less rest you give them, the more easily they're gonna burn out, the less they're gonna be able to do. A pro example of a type 1A, probably a Flow Manadu. He's a pure sprinter, loves lifting heavy weights. Lifting heavier actually makes him feel better. He uses a more muscular driven stroke. He's super competitive, loves to win. I think Flow Manadu is a really good example of a 1A potentially. So then we get onto the 1B neurotype. These are the explosive guys. 1Bs need to get more powerful to get faster and stronger. Type 1Bs are like the cooler cousins of the 1As. They have the same need for that intensity. They love that explosive power, but they're not as outwardly aggressive. You'll see them dominating in the fast, powerful sprints, but with a much calmer demeanor. They're much better losers. They're usually the kind of silent leader type. They can be the type to stay cool under pressure and bring out their best performances when the stakes are high, just like the 1As. But the key difference is the 1Bs thrive on changing things, on new experiences, because they have really high acetylcholine. Talk about that in other videos. They can pick things up really quickly, as in they can learn new things very quickly, which can be annoying to other people. But that also means that they need to be challenged all the time because they pick things up so quickly. So they need all kinds of different talent challenges, mixing things up in training, switching up strokes, switching up drills, switching up paces. And their main superpower is their elastic ability. They're usually not going to be as strong in heavy weights as a 1A, but when it comes to explosive, bouncy, more athletic type tasks, they're going to excel. So to look at the differences between the 1Bs and the 1As are going to be better at probably your power tower work. At your heavy lifting, they're going to be stronger, but your 1Bs are going to be better at your more elastic things like jumping, things like cleans, and things that use a faster pace. So personality traits of the type 1Bs. They're usually explosive but calm. So they can be super chill 1 minute, and then they can get up really and be crazy explosive and be a massive character, but then they can bring it back right down and be super cool again. So they can shift from being chill to intense in a snap. They love novelty. They need variety in their training, and they enjoy trying new things and having new techniques to play with. They're very fast learners. They pick up new skills quickly and often, and they usually master new drills way faster than others. What doesn't work for the type 1Bs? Same as the 1As, overly long endurance training. It's going to make them feel drained. It's going to kill their motivation. They're going to get really, really bored because there's no like challenge mentally, and it's going to make them feel unactivated. The 1Bs are the guys that really need something fast every single day to feel good. They're going to hate really repetitive or stagnant programs. They need to keep it dynamic and fresh, and doing too much volume is going to absolutely destroy them. The type 1Bs are probably the easiest neurotype to overtrain because they can handle higher volumes within a session. They can do that, but because they can do that doesn't mean they should, because they're going to pay the price later on. So with the 1Bs, it's really important to keep your volume fairly low, and more than any other neurotype is to stop when you start feeling good. Stop before you get to that point where you're getting carried away with doing way too much or pushing yourself too hard. I'm a 1B, and I see this with other 1Bs, is usually in season they're really, really slow, partly because in a traditional program, probably being overtrained, but also because they need a really, really high stress situation to perform at their best. So training tips for the 1B swimmers: keep your work fairly explosive in the gym and use the stretch reflex where needed to be stronger. So when you're lifting heavy weights, allow yourself to bounce out of the bottom of it. People are going to say that's bad form and stuff, but that stretch reflex needs to be trained because that's your superpower, and it's actually going to allow you to lift much, much heavier weights. So allow the bounce for a 1B. You got to keep workouts fresh by rotating equipment, fins, paddles, drills, mixing up the strokes. You can't do one thing for too long within a session, otherwise it's just going to bore the hell out, unless that session is something very high intensity, because that intensity is going to be the challenge there. You want to avoid too much muscular work. So doing too much bodybuilding style workouts are going to just make these guys sore and tired, whereas doing compound lifts, doing explosive work that uses your full body, those tasks that are really high nervous system tasks, are just going to make you feel better. You're going to be able to do more of them, and they're going to make you feel better the next day. So you can do that high CNS work every single day, as long as you're not doing too much of it. A pro example of a type 1B would be Caleb Dressel. Not necessarily the strongest swimmer, but shines more in explosive activities like jumps and cleans. Obviously he's strong, but if you look at a Dressel versus a Manadu in like a heavy lift, Manadu's probably going to be stronger. But you look at the more explosive tasks, Dressel's going to be better there. Dressel has a more technical stroke, as in he's more thinking about his technique all the time, trying to figure out how to do it better. Whereas a Manadu is just gonna be like muscling his way through the water. And Dressel really makes the most of his athleticism. If you watch his strokes, he tries to make sure that he's using that stretch reflex in his strokes. So they're gonna be more accelerating through each stroke and bouncing where he can. Using that stretch reflex where he can. So that's the type 1Bs. The 2A neurotype is the variety neurotype. They're fairly balanced, so everything works, but nothing works for a long time. The 2As are the ultimate chameleon. They're adaptable, they're flexible, they love variety. The 2A swimmer can do just about anything: short sprints, middle distance, technique work, high volumes, low, and they can switch between these modes pretty quickly. However, their biggest challenge is that they can get bored really easily, and what works for them now might not work for the next month. So the 2As need constant change to stay motivated. They respond best to training plans that mix things up all the time, whether it's alternating between speed work, technique work, different types of strength training in the gym. The key for the 2A is variety, and without it, they're gonna lose interest, their performance is gonna drop, and even if they're not physically burnt out, for them, they can actually handle, probably of all the neurotypes, they can probably handle the most volume and handle the most training. They're probably the most resilient neurotype, but where they're gonna burn out is they're gonna burn out mentally. If the program isn't constantly changing, constantly challenging them in a new way, they're gonna burn out mentally, and that's gonna show up physically as, oh, maybe they're overtraining, but they probably can do more. It's just that their brain isn't involved because they want to change all the time. So personality traits of the 2A. They're adaptable and versatile. They can handle a variety of training styles, and they crave that variety. So they need regular changes in their training to stay engaged. They're highly motivated by others. They seek admiration and they thrive on social feedback. These are the people that are like the fun guy at the party. They want everyone to like them, so they will change their behavior based on who they're talking to make that person like them. They will mirror the behavior of the person that they're with. And these are usually the guys that are friends with everyone. They know everyone, but they don't necessarily have like really, one or two really close friends. And they really thrive on social feedback. So if you want to make a 2A feel good, a few compliments are going to go massively for them because they want that admiration from others. So things that don't work for 2As. Basically, just rigid, repetitive training plans. They're going to get bored really quickly. And if they stick with one training focus for too long, so if you have like a massive aerobic phase, that's really going to bore them. It's better to have them 3 weeks focus on one thing, 3 weeks focus on another thing. And obviously you keep everything in all the time, but you switch your main focus every few weeks to keep them engaged. And the 2As can handle higher volumes, they can handle all kinds of stuff. Like I said, they're the most resilient neurotype, but if you lose their engagement mentally by doing the same thing over and over again, it's gonna seem like they're burning out. So training tips for the 2A swimmers: constantly switch up your training. Don't stick to one thing for too long. Mix speed, endurance, technique work in the pool and gym, kind of similar to the 1B. If you're in a club, switching the different groups that you're training in. And for the 2A, it's really important to have a training partner. That's gonna make a massive difference. Regular feedback and training partners is what's going to make or break a 2A. So a pro example of a 2A would be Chad Leclos. I worked with Chad, super likable, super easy to get along with, loves switching things up, very adaptable, and capable of doing a crazy amount of training so long as he's engaged and things are constantly changing up. So when I was working in the gym with Chad Leclos, the best training methods that worked for him in the gym were things like contrast circuits, doing something different every day. So one day we would have isos mixed with a bit of explosive work, then we'd do like more heavy lifting, then we'd have a more explosive day. Basically just constantly doing different things that are gonna get him better and faster and feeling better in the pool. And that really worked for him because once we built that base, he was able to stay in the gym, get doing some good work. And at the end of that season, he won double gold at World Champs, went a PB at 30 years old, had a crazy good season. Now we get onto the 2Bs. This is the sensation neurotype. And as we go further into these neurotypes, the anxiety of each neurotype increases, like the natural resting anxiety. So the 2B is getting towards the more anxious side of the neurotypes, and they tend to have lower self-esteem, and all of their emotions are enhanced, whether it's positive or negative. The type 2Bs are very emotionally driven swimmers. They feel things really deeply, whether it's joy or frustration or love or sadness or nerves. And this means they can be very sensitive to pressure, and they tend to choke if they're feeling too much anxiety. However, their sensitivity also makes them great at reading others and responding to one-on-one coaching. And it tends to make them really good teammates because they're willing to sacrifice themselves. They're really willing to go above and beyond for other people. The 2Bs still need appreciation and admiration from others, but rather than trying to impress everyone, they're gonna have fewer but really intense connections with a few people. These are the people that are going to have one or two really, really close friends, and they tend to do well in smaller, more controlled environments. They really need a coach who can make them feel valued and appreciated. And they're often the athletes who give their all to their best relationship. These guys really need to feel things. So when you're trying to improve their technique, think about feeling things in a certain muscle. When you're in the gym, using more mind-muscle connection, more bodybuilding style work is gonna work better for the 2Bs. And really for the 2Bs to get stronger and faster, the best way for them to do that is to actually build some muscle first and then use that muscle to be strong, because they're not very neural, unlike the type 1s. The 2B is going to be very muscularly driven. So high intensity work isn't going to do them a lot of favors. They still can do that and they still need to do that high intensity work, but the volume of that high intensity work needs to be very low. And when I say high intensity work, I mean like high neural stuff like sprints, things sort of under 10 seconds. But for the 2Bs, where they really thrive is in sessions where they have low rest, a more grindy style program, doing like threshold repeats, the types of sets where they're gonna build lactate, because 2Bs can handle lactate the most of any neurotype. And these are often the guys that are gonna build into a set. At the start of a set, their adrenaline's gonna be really low, so their first few reps are gonna suck, but they're really gonna shine, and they're, often gonna go like PBs in training towards the end of those sets, because they've had that time to warm up and their adrenaline's gotten higher and higher as the session's gone on. So they often get mistaken that they're like sandbagging or that they're saving themselves for the last rep, but really these guys just need a really long warm-up to actually perform at their best. And the personality traits of the type 2B, very emotionally driven, responds deeply to praise or criticism, very sensitive to pressure, very prone to choking under stress. They're very relationship focused and they perform best with one-on-one attention, and they love to talk about their feelings. If a coach can understand them from that perspective, they're gonna get on really well with them. Training tips for the 2B swimmers, they work really well with isolating certain areas. So in the gym, working on smaller muscle groups, building muscles, getting a good pump so that they can feel that mind-muscle connection, they can feel that sensation. And in the pool, doing things where they're gonna get a burn, where they're gonna start to feel that lactate. Doing like pull sets and kick sets where they can really focus on their legs or focus on their arms or focus on like certain muscles. That stuff's gonna work really well for them. Now, these guys can't handle as much switching up, so you wanna keep the training more consistent. So in the gym, not switching up exercises too much, but doing more sets of that exercise. So they can handle higher volumes, but keeping things fairly consistent is where they're gonna really shine. And that repetition is what's gonna allow them to actually reduce their anxiety when they get to meets. And their anxiety is gonna reduce actually as they get more warmed up. So a little tip, if you think you're a 2B, make sure you spend ages in your warm-up, almost get like your first race or two over and done within the warm-up, because you're probably the kind of person that really, the first 1 or 2 races of a meet really suck. So what you can do is on the day, have a big warm-up and then do a race the day before in practice. So that's the 2Bs. Now we're getting on to the neurotype 3. This is the control neurotype. These guys are the highest anxiety of all the neurotypes. Type 3s crave control to decrease their stress, basically. Type 3s are all about routine and control, and they thrive on predictability and structure and making a plan, because they can get stressed out when things don't go according to their plan. These swimmers are often the ones who excel in the long distance endurance-based events because they're very patient, they're very disciplined, they're very technique focused. Type 3s love working on they're often perfectionists, constantly refining their stroke and focusing on the details. But the downside is that they can be very resistant to change. It can make them very anxious if things are too chaotic. They'll really struggle. But once you get them into a groove, they can stay focused. They can perform at a better level for really long periods of time. Things that don't work for the type 3. Like we said, chaotic or random training environments, things where things are very mixed. They need that structure and predictability. And again, like the 2Bs, are not going to be able to handle really highly intense training too much. Again, obviously they need to sprint, they need to lift, they need to do things like that. But the really high intensity stuff needs to be really low because it's going to drain them and wear them out. And again, the best way to get them into that work is to have a really long warm up and get them into that zone where they're gradually building into the thing. So the anxiety is reduced because they're kind of easing into it. So in the gym, for example, we use lots of warm-up sets before they get to their main set. And then the main sets, there's only 1 or 2 sets of them. So they're still building strength, but they're basically reducing their anxiety as they get there. They love that structure and that discipline and having a plan. If you give them a plan, show them what the next 3 months, what the next year, what the next 5 years is gonna look like, they're gonna love that. But if you throw them something last minute, if you throw them a curveball, they're gonna completely break down. So the best training tips for a type 3 swimmer is stick to structured long-term plans that build slowly over time, your linear progressions, doing very similar lifts in the gym, similar styles of workouts, longer repeats, focusing on probably mainly endurance and technique work with a little bit of variation, but not too much. Avoid the chaotic training environments, keep everything very predictable and planned. It's kind of hard to think of pro examples for the 2Bs and the 3s, because usually they're not the best athletes because they tend to not do very well under high pressure situations. But I would say maybe for a type 3, a Katie Ledecky might be that. She's very technical, loves the long distance stuff, loves the plan, loves turning up to practice early and getting extra technique work done. Struggles to get those really high intensities, but she can keep going for really long. Tends to be more introverted, not a very explosive personality, but very toned down, very cautious, very careful. I might be wrong, but that's the kind of vibe that I get. And I just can't think of a 2B example. So if you can think of a 2B example, leave it in the comments below. That would be interesting. And if you can think of another example other than the ones that I've given for the different neurotypes, leave a comment below which neurotype you think you might be. Or maybe you're starting to realize that your friends might be a certain neurotype, or as I was explaining one neurotype that you're like, oh yeah, that's this person. And you can even do this with your coaches, because coaches are gonna be a certain neurotype. They're gonna train people a certain way based on their neurotype. So leave a comment below what's going through your head right now. But the really important thing is, why does all this matter? And it matters because if you've been stuck in a plateau, or you're in a training program that might not be working for you, but it is working for others, the neurotypes really kind of starts to understand that, and it starts to explain the reasons why. So if you've been struggling with your swim training, feel like you've hit a plateau, if you feel like your training doesn't actually fit you, then hopefully this video has given you a bit of an idea to start figuring that out, start figuring yourself out. And if you're interested, what we do, and if you're interested in joining one of our memberships, our neurotype membership, we give you a neurotype test, which is a questionnaire that gives you a good idea of what neurotype you probably are. And then we design the strength training program based on that neurotype. And we've had really good results with this, even with people in a swim program that isn't working for them, just by adding a strength program that is giving them some of what they need, what their body is craving, actually makes them feel better for their swim workouts, and has been a game changer in actually changing their performance, changing how they respond to their swim workouts, just by adding in that extra bit of strength training that does fit their needs. So if you're interested in seeing what that's all about, click the link below in the description and join up. Could be a major difference, could be the thing that breaks you out of that plateau, could be the thing that gets you back into the flow, back going PBs again, and back loving the sport. And if you like this video, leave a comment. Like I said before, which neurotype are you? Are you noticing neurotypes in your coaches, in swimmers around you? And are you starting to understand like why certain things aren't working for you, why you like certain types of training more than others? And I'll see you in the next video where we're gonna go into a lot more detail on all of these in future. Stay tuned, subscribe, and check out the other neurotype videos. Thanks for watching, see you next time.